everybody! It's time for another What We Read, and you're going to hear about
some really interesting, because we're going for this What We Read, we're going sort of back to our roots, and and to Alexa's point, it would make sense to put these two genres together in this What We Read, as explained by sort of like these sides. So we're going to start with a couple of romance things from you.
Yes, we're going to start with the romance read. So I'm going to talk about the first in a series. So to preface this, Rachel and I always try to read one new to us paranormal series, you know, every year, and we talk about it during Halloween just because that's our thing. And this year we decided, oh, let's give the Lords in the Underworld series, which is by Gina Showalter. We decided to give that one a try. Unfortunately, we have decided not to continue on with that series, but we did finish reading the first book, which is called The Darkest Night. So there is a young woman named Ashlyn Darrow, and all her life she's been able to hear voices. And it's not just the voices of people around her. Any spot she's been in, she can hear conversations from the past. So she can hear all sorts of
cool. All right.
And, you know, she's been searching for a way to, I guess, silence the voice, or at least have some semblance of control over it.
Yeah, you would like to.
Because it's really hard for her to live like a normal life unless she's in a newly constructed room where there's no voices or no conversations to be had. So she decides to go to this sort of elusive estate because she's heard that there are some powerful men there who are involved in the supernatural that might be able to help. And she ends up crossing paths with one of their most dangerous members named Maddox. And it turns out the men at this estate have a secret of their own. All of them are housing demons because they all used to be warriors for the gods, except that one day they decided to hatch this plan because they were a little upset that Pandora got to guard this box of demons, because Pandora in the story is a warrior goddess, so they were a little upset about that. They let the demons out because they were going to prove that they could, you know, control it and put the demons back, except that's not what happened, and now they are sentenced to housing these different demons, so.
Except that's not what happened. That's a great line.
So the thing is, the premise of this book is really interesting. I really love the Pandora's box thing, because I honestly had no idea that that was what was the premise going in, like the myth, like the fantastical part of it anyway, and that part is so interesting. Like, if I had, or if I do keep reading the series someday, which I honestly doubt because the writing style wasn't for me, but we'll get to that in a second. But if I had ever continued with the series, it would be primarily because I'd be curious to see how they wrap up the whole, like, demons escaping from Pandora's box storyline and trying to figure out how to either break the curse of the demon or, you know, trap them back in the box. Because that's so interesting. And it's funny because that's the opposite way I feel about the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, where like the side plot with like their enemies was the least interesting part to me. In this case, it was the most interesting part to me because the romance just, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about this. And like, no shade to anyone who likes the romance in this. I can see why, I guess, because the two characters and like how they are as types and how they get together, there's some appeal there, but to me, I was just like, it's so cringy. It made me roll my eyes. They haven't even known each other for more than like 2 days, okay? And I'm just like, and there's no explanation whatsoever of like, is she fated to be his? Like, is there something like stronger that keeps them connected? So like, because the romance is the primary thing about this book, because it is a paranormal romance series, I was like, well, if you fall flat there, then clearly we're gonna have a problem, right? And thankfully it was not just me, and Rachel also felt this way. But it was just sad because like the premise was so interesting. I would have liked to read more about the other men who are housing other demons. But like, the romance
and don't we all?
The romance was just not it. It was not it for me, and
it is for some people, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I just,
as
I have nothing else to say.
Review.
I just genuinely, it also doesn't help that not a lot happens in the book. Aside from like them tentatively interacting and then eventually being like, I love you. So, you know, unfortunately that was definitely a miss for me, and I honestly, sincerely don't think I would continue with the series. The only reason I was slightly tempted to at the end is because the next book is about the character I was the most interested in. But I'm still kind of like, nah, I don't think I need that. I'm good.
Fair.
The next book, however, I did enjoy a little bit more, and that book is The Boyfriend Project, which is by Farah Rochen? I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. This is a book, it's funny because this one has a very similar premise, or like starting point, to the Central Park Pack series by Lauren Lane, except that the fallout is a little bit different because at the beginning of this book, Samaya finds out that her boyfriend has been triple timing on her, and she ends up becoming friends with the other two women that he's been seeing, and there's this whole confrontation between her and two women, and the boyfriend that goes viral. Like, it gets memed, it gets like, it's super, like, it basically disrupts our everyday life. In the end, the three bond over the fact that they had the wool pulled over them, and then they decide that they want to focus on bettering themselves and achieving their own dreams before they even start thinking about a relationship again, and they call it the boyfriend project. The thing that messes this up is that Samaya actually gets a new coworker at the tech startup that she works for, and he is cute and sweet and lovely to her. His name is Daniel, and obviously she kind of has feelings for him, but then obviously she's also trying to keep, you know, to the pact that she and the other girls made.
Sure.
Except that Daniel has a few secrets of his own, which, you know, unfold in the book. It's funny because I didn't know about Daniel's story going into the book, so I guess I'm just not going to tell you guys either, because it was a fun surprise for me, because I was not expecting it at all. This was fairly run-of-the-mill in terms of romance, but it was cute. Like, I enjoyed the dynamic between Samaya and Daniel. I really liked that she had this friendship with the other two girls, Taylor and London, and that she had a close relationship with her sister as well. It was just fun because Samaya was so capable, because she's actually one of like the most high-level employees at this office, and she puts in so much work and so much heart into the stuff she does, whether it's at the office or with her pet project, which is an app that she's trying to develop in the story. And it's just cool to see someone who's like pretty sure of herself in all of these other regards be like, I know my place, I know the things I have to do to keep that place. You know, and she's just, you know, she feels very strongly about the fact that she is in a position of privilege, and she wants to help other people who might not be able to get that, especially as she's a woman of color in tech, which is no easy feat for sure.
Sure.
And then there's Daniel's storyline, which is just, it's honestly like shenanigans. It feels like his storyline is the part that got pulled out of a movie. And I say that considering the fact that Samaya is the one with the video gone viral storyline.
There you go.
Yeah, it was fun. It was sweet watching them, you know, fall in love and develop this relationship. And even though I knew what the conflict was going to be, I was still like, it's gonna be fine, they're gonna work this out, it's gonna be okay. And sometimes at the end of the day, that is really all you want from a romance read, just to know that we are gonna get to the, you know, happy moment where they can finally be together. So I did enjoy this one. I don't know that I would say it would be one of my most memorable romance reads, but it was definitely an enjoyable one, and I can definitely see myself picking up the next two books in the series, since it's supposed to be about the other two friends.
Yeah.
And I am mildly curious to see how their love stories turn out. So yeah, this one was fun. You should check it out if you're looking for a new contemporary romance read.
Right, so as Alexa has gone back to her sort of like romance roots, I went back to my horror roots right now, and it's a lot of horror, basically. So here's a classic. I actually unhauled the physical copy of this book, but somehow found it on Comixology in graphic novel format. So
Sure.
this is, which is also consequently starring Ian Somerhalder on Netflix as a series. It's called V Wars.
Oh yes, that's
V
right.
standing for vampire.
Vampires. Yep.
But Jonathan Mayberry, and volume 1 is called The Crimson Queen. So it's basically, vampirism is a dormant kind of virus, I want to say, kind of situation that sort of was awakened in the Arctic or whatever that is. And it was sort of spreading across sort of the world. And Ian Somerhalder's character is a doctor.
Like Ian Somerhalder.
His name eludes me a little bit, but Ian Somerhalder, most people know from the Vampire Diaries. So just think of him, because ultimately he's infinitely more
He's nice.
pleasing on the eyes compared to how they rendered him in animation. In animation, he looks like you look at the graphic novel, and you probably read the book, and you go, yeah, that's a professor. That is somebody with a PhD, and that makes sense. Ian Somerhalder, on the other hand, is like, we can watch him for maybe in like 8 hours, and he's the only one who's sort of sympathetic to the vampires until such time when the vampires do something terrible to his family.
And then he's not sympathetic to them.
And then he's not. So it's kind of like World War Z a little bit, in that there's like a, you know, but beneath Game of Thrones, I guess, because there's like conspiracies happening, and there are spies everywhere. There's a little bit of V for Vendetta kind of, you know, there's twists and turns, and are the humans working for the vampires working for the humans? Who is really inflaming this war between the zombie? I can't. So it's just, do I want to read the rest of it? Probably not. But do I finally know what it's about? Sure. Am I going to try to watch the first episode of Ian Somerhalder's show? Probably. Just for, you know, like it's...
to see.
Like, I've been known to watch the Legacies every so often, so I will give this one a chance.
Outing yourself there, are we?
A little bit. Next, we want to talk about Sanctus, Volume 1, Kings or Pawns of Men. This one's weird. This one is set... It's a little strange.
Would never have guessed from that title.
It's easily probably my least favorite of the things that I've read of this list. Not for anything, but it's just not for me. It sort of centers around like an angel who was being tortured by whatever passes for the church now, in her attempt to try to, go against them and the evil machinations they're doing on this planet. The angel manages to escape, but imparts her essence to a little girl. And the story totally shifts, and randomly it focuses onto some other character that stumbles upon said little girl, and how, she has the angelic powers of heaven and is now trying. And that sounds a little cooler than it actually reads, because the way it reads is just sort of like kind of shock value A leading into shock value B, and it's your traditional post-apocalyptic good versus evil kind of heaven and earth and hell kind of deal. To me, it didn't really stand out too much because it had all of the hallmarks, but it didn't have enough of a spark for me to want to keep going and resonate, I want to say is the word. Like, it hit all the marks, but they didn't really resonate as well. So there's that. Lastly, I do want to talk about Something is Killing the Children, because that was fun. It's a book by James Tinian IV, at least that's, I think, how it's pronounced, kind of like, because I just see the IV and I'm like Henry the Fourth. I get that's cool. I mean, you are the fourth. I mean, why would that not be part of your name? The story starts out typical horror story fashion. Starts with a little boy, and all of his friends are murdered, and he's the only one who saw it. Everybody thinks he did it. He totally did not, and apparently, he's the only one who can see it. Until one lady comes into town, and she's like, "I'm also the only one who can see it. I'm here to kill it." And that was cool. Like, this was everything I would have loved to have watched as a kid, which, come to think of it in hindsight, I shouldn't have, not at that age. But it's great. I highly recommend it for anyone who's sort of like into the sort of like creature feature horror story fan, especially if it's the kind of creature feature that has deeper lore. See, creature features come in two ways. You either have the one where there's a thing trying to eat everybody and you don't know what it is, or there's a deeper lore to it and you're trying to sort of like, there's like a bigger fight. And so I had to like, so I snagged this one off of Comixology. It was so good I had to buy the next one. Like, that's how, like, I'm just like, I need to know what happens next. So highly recommend it. What is the mystery? What are these things? What secret organization that's not the Watchers Council and that's not Vampire Slayers is this girl sort of part of? What is her family tied to these creatures that are invisible to everyone except children, which is their primary prey? So that's cool. All right.
I like her look so happy about that.
I not that I like the idea of children being murdered, but I do like the idea of a terrible, terrible monster that we all have to band together and fight now. So that's kind of like a deal.
Okay, back to romance then. The next book I read is actually an indie published romance, and I heard about it because of Lisa from Remarkably Lisa. The title of the book is Crushing on You, and it's by author Jen Trin, and it is the first in the Burl Friends series, is what it's called. The main character is named Anna, and she is an aspiring music journalist who lives in New York. And there is one rule she has when it comes to dating, and that rule is that she doesn't want to date Asian guys. Except when she's on a plane on the way to her best friend's wedding, who should she find herself attracted to but a fellow wedding guest who happens to be an Asian guy? And so, obviously you can kind of tell where the chips are going to fall with that story, but this one was really cute. I really liked it a lot. There's music in it, there's rock climbing in it, there's food in it, and best of all, there's a lot of Asian cultural influences in the story. I really like that there were two different perspectives on Asian family upbringings as well. Anna's upbringing was very different from Ian's upbringing, and both of them sort of are the product of those upbringings, I guess, and they kind of butt against each other in the story at some point because of it. And I don't know, it was just such a sweet but also sexy romance. Like, it was very fun to read and I enjoyed it a lot. I basically sat down and did not move again until I'd finished this book because I was so entertained, because it made me laugh, but it was also like, oh, I can relate to that feeling, or, oh, this is so cute. So it was a really good book, and I'm really looking forward to reading the next one in the series. I definitely recommend checking it out if you, first of all, if you want to read a romance where the main couple they're both Asian American specifically. If you like stories that have sort of extra details to make the characters come to life in terms of their interests, like rock climbing or music. Rock climbing is the big one in the book though. Yeah, it was so much fun. It was like, I can't really say much more than that. It was cute. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time reading it. I read this during Lunar New Year, actually. I read it on the day of Lunar New Year, which kind of feels oddly appropriate now that I think about it. So it was great. It was fun. Highly recommend checking it out. And the last book I'm going to talk about is also a book that I read in one go because it was so much fun as well. And the book is A Duke by Default, which is by Alyssa Cole. This is the second book in her Reluctant Royal series, and it's actually about a character you meet in the first book named Portia. She's kind of, she doesn't want to be a disappointment to anyone in her life, her family, or friends, or even
Sure.
herself anymore. And so she's decided that she's going to be a new Portia and sort of, you know, tackle things in the way that she thinks she should ideally tackle them. One of the things that she decides to do is to sort of get a change of pace, and she takes on an apprenticeship at an armory in Scotland.
Sure.
And when she meets her boss, doesn't expect that she's going to find herself attracted to him. Nor does she expect that as they get closer together, she uncovers the fact that he's actually a duke. And nobody knew until she found out on accident. And so now she's helping him prepare to, you know, take on the position, take on that role, and you know, what it means for them. But will they be able to find their happily ever after in the face of everything that stands in their way at this point? And it was so cute. Okay, not only do I think that it was fun to be in Scotland for the setting, because obviously that was a big draw for me in this book, I also really like the armory setting. I really love that the guy in the book, Tavish, he makes swords, and he also engages in like sword fighting classes and lessons and like reenactments, and it's so much fun to read about. He's also super close with his brother and sister-in-law, and it's just so sweet to watch them all together. I loved seeing this whole like journey that they have to take where he decides that he wants to be the duke so that he can do better for the people of his community. And it was just so much fun. And like Portia too, I found her so relatable. Like she feels like she's supposed to be at an age where she knows what she's doing and she's sure of what she wants, because she's close to 30, I think, in the book. And it felt so relatable to see someone still struggling with like making mistakes and trying to figure out what's right for her. And you know, it was just nice to see her like work through that journey and to realize in the end like she doesn't have to change everything about herself to fit into some mold. Instead, it was more like coming to terms with like, this is who I am and this is what I can do and these are my strengths, you know. It was just nice. And also the romance between them was really cute. Very steamy at times, but also very sweet, just to see them bring out the best in each other and to be so persistent about, you know, their feelings for each other. That was also really, really nice to see. Plus, Portia deserves someone who would actually take care of her or take her feelings into account, and I think Tavish was like the perfect match for her in that sense. And he needed someone who would push him out of his comfort zone, and she was the perfect match for him in that sense. So it was just fun. Like, I had enjoyed the first book in this series, but I think I enjoyed this one even more just because I think the characters were so great and their chemistry was perfect. So definitely recommend checking this one out, and I'm looking forward to reading more books in the series in the future.
Yeah, alrighty then. That's
All right,
that.
ending on a high note for this What We Read. We hope you enjoyed it, and let us know what you thought of the books we talked about in the comments down below. You can find us on all our other social media as well, which is always down there. And we'll see you guys with a new video soon. Bye.